Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, esteemed delegates, good morning and welcome to the plenary sessions of the AOIP Vision Group Conference 2026. Thank you to all the delegates for being here today and a warm welcome to our participants joining us online. Ladies and gentlemen, the AOIP Vision Group Conference is an international symposium that brings together delegates from ASEAN member states and its dialogue partners to advance the operationalizations of the ASEAN outlook on the Indo-Pacific. Over the past 2 days, we have engaged in insightful discussions across the 4 pillars of the OIP: maritime cooperations, connectivity, SDGs, and economic cooperations. And in these plenary sessions, we will bring together all the working groups to present their finalized policy recommendations, which will serve as a guiding framework to strengthen cooperations and advance our collective efforts in the Indo-Pacific region. And to begin the sessions, we would like to invite Dr. Sofwan Albana, the chair of the drafting committee, followed by presentations from each working group. So without further ado, Dr. Sofwan Albana, you may have the floor.
Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera untuk kita semua. Excellencies, professors, ladies and gentlemen. Today we are going to present the result of discussion yesterday on the 4 working groups by ASEAN Outlook on Indo-Pacific Vision Group. The discussion is happening amidst a very important change in our world today, as had been noted by everyone. We are in the 3rd month of 2026, and in this 3rd month we already witnessed a lot of storms happening, not only literal storms like what is battering Sumatra last month and still last year and still have repercussions until today, but also the geopolitical storms which is happening in probably different parts of the world, in the Middle East, but also having global impacts. Missiles and bombs are sent to Tehran, to Tel Aviv, to different parts of the Middle East, but the world is burning. And there are warnings that this might not be something like after rain you will see the rainbow. Maybe the rain will continue for some time, and thus it will affect the region as well. And if we are watching the news, we see that there are already a lot of impacts from the events unfolding in the Middle East to the Indo-Pacific, including the incidents in the Indian Ocean waters where a ship was sunk by US torpedoes. But we also feel the impact in the form of rising oil prices, although yesterday the oil price was a bit falling after the statement by President Donald Trump, but the situation is still fluctuating. So amidst that context, I really think that the discussion is a very timely one. The discussion seeks to look at the ASEAN outlook on Indo-Pacific, how far the AOIP has been implemented, have been progressing amidst these various changes in global politics. We are in a time where cooperation between states, between countries, are becoming more and more important, but at the same time also becoming more and more difficult. So today I have the honor of chairing the discussion We will start with a presentation by the 4 working groups represented by their respective speakers. We will start with the most contentious but also important one, which is the Maritime Cooperation Group, because maritime is also one which really makes the ASEAN outlook on Indo-Pacific is very different. I heard that the discussion goes very dynamic with some hours are spent discussing the problem definition. So we will look at how the working group defines the issue and how they offer the recommendations. The group will be represented by Dr. Adrian Ang. The second group will be the Connectivity Working Group, which will discuss about how amidst this geopolitical dynamics, geoeconomic dynamics, ASEAN could strengthen the connectivity beyond the action plan. The next presentation, the third presentation, will be by the SDGs working group. A very important one, especially because 2030 SDG deadline is already approaching, and maybe everyone is already forgetting, because it's already very close, but at the same time we are distracted by rather than collective goal, collective action. We are in a situation where states are in a lot of tensions and disarray, which of course will affect a lot of the achievement of the SDGs. And last but not least, we are going, and the Connectivity Working Group will be represented by Dr. Hafiz Hashim, and the SDGs Working Group will be represented by Dr. Chayan Menon and Dr. Moituza. The last presentation will be presented by the Economy Working Group. Of course, amidst this, all of these changes, even before the Iran war, the global economy has already been under pressure from various challenges, including the tariff war and other issues. So it is important to look at how the ASEAN outlook on Indo-Pacific could lay out ways for Indo-Pacific economies, Indo-Pacific countries to work together navigating these challenges. So hopefully the discussion will provide us with pathways and ideas to use the ASEAN outlook to operationalize the ASEAN outlook on Indo-Pacific effectively and help us to guide Indo-Pacific navigating this turbulent world. So without further ado, I would like to invite Dr. Adrian Ang to present the result of the discussion by the Maritime Working Group. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shofwan, for setting the context for our discussions this morning. Very good morning, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends and colleagues, and those of you joining us online. All right, I'm Adrian Ang, Chair of the Maritime Cooperation Working Group. So before I present our policy recommendations this morning, I would like to thank my fellow members of the working group for their contributions, and as Shofwan mentioned, our dynamic discussions that resulted in our policy memo, and also to Kelvin for helping put the memo together. So what I was told to do really is to focus on the policy recommendations, but before that, I think Shofwan has already outlined the context for our memo, right? And if we look at our problem statement and also our recommendations, we think we have a great deal of overlap with our colleagues in the other working group. So our memo looks not just at maritime security, but also looks at connectivity in terms of critical underwater infrastructure, and also with the economy, because again, right, all this works together for the plans for a regional economy, and also we look at fisheries and sustainability with the SDG working group as well. So with that, I'll get to our policy recommendations. And one of the things we looked at was the need to institutionalize sort of cross-sectoral synergy and awareness. So, right, we're aware that, right, sort of AOIP has multiple pillars, and one of the dangers of right, the pillars is pillarization, that there is a lack of, right, sort of cross-pillar interaction. So we argue that, right, sort of ASEAN must bridge this gap between to create a unified resilience framework. So with that in mind, right, sort of our recommendation is that there is a need to update the ASEAN Maritime Outlook, the AMO, to add a dedicated CUI chapter, Critical Underwater Infrastructure chapter, that explicitly lists subsea telecommunications cables, power interconnects, pipelines, and to classify them as priority assets for protection and resilience planning. And to further that, there is a need to create a multi-stakeholder task force, right, sort of involving, again, right, sort of digital, energy, defense ministers alongside industry and civil regulators to align technical standards to create this security by design for new corridors for critical underwater infrastructure. And also, another point here is to integrate CUI, right, into naval planning, to make it a standing item at the ASEAN Naval Chiefs meeting, right, so that to develop a restricted access regional, quote-unquote, vulnerability map, right, that lays out the geography of all CUI, right, because right now there is no common database, right, for ASEAN member states that lays out the geography of CUI, right? But making this restricted access also, right, sort of deals with the problem of exposing sensitive information regarding CUI so that, right, sort of bad actors do not have information regarding the location of CUI. So another policy recommendation we have then is to foster practical cooperation and information sharing. Right, to leverage existing maritime domain awareness platforms to support civilian-led protection and repair efforts. So once again, right, sort of when it comes to CUI, there is, I think, no need to reinvent the wheel. We already have the Information Fusion Center, and we can use that to fuse AIS data, vessel intelligence, right, operator reports, and this will provide real-time alerts to operators and coastal authorities about suspicious activity near critical underwater infrastructure, right? And pursuant to that, right, there is we think, a need to conduct joint tabletop exercises, right, sort of utilizing ADMM plus platforms to simulate various situations, such as a simultaneous cable and power failures, right? This will be able to allow states to test ROVs and diver deployments, right? Civil military coordination and cross-border logistics, right? And also with regard to the fragility or vulnerability of CUI, there is a need to streamline repair permitting. So this is really building on the 2019 ASEAN guidelines to implement a pre-cleared green lane for certified repair vessels, right? This would also include pre-vetted crews to expedite the process to reduce outage times from weeks to hopefully hours or just from weeks to hours. So there is also, I think, a need to strengthen strategic partnerships and global standards. Here, right, in order to maintain ASEAN centrality, right, we hope to adopt neutral international standards, right, while balancing engagement with all external partners. So this would require the adoption of the International Cable Protection Committee, ICPC-based norms, right, and also UNCLOS-based norms, right. This would be best practices by the ICPC, right, grounded in 1982 UNCLOS, right, in terms of designating cable protection zones, right, with anchoring restrictions, etc. Right, and this can also be used as a basis for functional cooperation, right? So we use technical forums, the ARF, ADMM+, working groups, ASEAN-China channels for neutral outcome-focused cooperation, right? In areas such as sensors, sensor technology, repair protocols. This will allow the preservation of ASEAN centrality and reduce the politicization of what really is a public good for the region, right? And we also hope to be able to build external capacity building with partner countries such as Australia, Japan, right, and the ROK, as well as Quad partners where appropriate. In terms of training, right, sort of ROV repair, tech transfers, etc. And also to pursue infrastructure redundancy and supply diversity. So ASEAN member states should invest in multiple route corridors and spur lines to eliminate single points of failure. And a multi-vendor procurement strategy, right, will avoid strategic dependence on any one state and preserve ASEAN centrality, right? Another point of recommendation is the establishment of an expert unit within the ASEAN Secretariat to examine, right, Indo-Pacific maritime security challenges and ASEAN's response. So this unit, we believe, right, will continuously monitor bilateral and multilateral initiatives and to explore cooperation between ASEAN and, right, these partners. And this unit scope, we view it as broad, ranging from cooperation to strengthen national capabilities in terms of cybersecurity, MDA, and maritime law enforcement to regional maritime order and military balance of power. And in order to do so, right, securing commitment at the leadership level is viewed as essential. So to that end, we recommend the establishment of a session within the EAS to discuss maritime security issues, right here. So here, ASEAN should present its initiatives regarding the challenges that are facing the region and the corresponding policy measures to address these challenges, right? And ASEAN here, again, building on last year's memo, right, should actively utilize Track 2 channels to present new ideas and concepts for maritime security discussions at the EAS. All right, turning to sustainability or right, sort of the blue economy, right, ASEAN, we believe, should work together with dialogue partners towards the creation of a regional fisheries management organization, right, or RFMO for the South China Sea. This, we believe, could be rooted in the existing Southeast Asia Fisheries Development Center, right, the SEAFDEC, and or the coordinating body on the seas of East Asia, COPC, right? And in the meantime, right, well, that is aspirational, right? Regional states can work together to audit and benchmark their existing fisheries regulations to identify areas of common ground, right, as well as differences. All right, we believe that discussions should be initiated on control of ship-to-ship oil transfers, right, as well as establishing a maritime safety and rescue coordinating mechanism, right, similar to AHA centers, right, with an emergency contact network, common distress procedures, and pre-agreed protocols for requesting assistance. And also institutionalizing an annual maritime rescue and underwater emergency exercises that would bring together navies, coast guards, hydrographic agencies, as well as civilian emergency responders. All right, we ask or invite ASEAN dialogue partners to develop a structured partnership for maritime rescue training with ASEAN member states, right? And we call for a collaboration, a proactive collaboration with multilaterals through AOIP, right? So here, ASEAN could establish a AOIP plus or enhanced AOIP working groups where multilateral blocs are invited to contribute strictly to non-traditional maritime security objectives. Here we're talking about HADR, humanitarian assistance and disaster relief, maritime cybersecurity, and combating IUU fishing, right? So the goal here is to ensure that external resources are utilized while absorbing these exclusive groups into the inclusive ASEAN AOIP ecosystem, right? And we also seek to operationalize, right, sort of the AMO through enhanced maritime cooperation under AOIP, right? So here we're looking at the establishment of a dedicated AOIP maritime task force, right, tasked with addressing specific vulnerabilities outlined in the AMO, right, including the standardized regional protocols for maritime cybersecurity and creating a centralized real-time ASEAN MDA fusion center, right, linking the naval and Coast Guard commands of all member states. And finally, right, we have, right, a couple of recommendations given, right, sort of what is going on currently in the Middle East. Right, so we ask that AMS and dialogue partners appeal to parties to agree on a designated energy corridor where fuel shipments can pass by unhampered. Right, this would be similar to the Black Sea Grain Initiative, initially brokered by the UN and Turkey, that allowed Russia and Ukraine, right, to export grain and fertilizer, and also to ask AMS and dialogue partners to discuss how vulnerable countries with less fuel reserves can access surplus stored energy from neighbors or partners. So I think I'll just end here and turn it over to my colleagues from the other working groups.
Thank you very much, Dr. Adrian. I really like the presentation. I know then why the discussion was going quite long. I really see that all of you are putting a lot of thoughts in the discussion, because the recommendations are very comprehensive, but at the same time also very detailed, and it's very interesting to look at how you are not only addressing institutional issues, but also practical challenges. A lot of interesting ideas put forward by the working group, from institutional strengthening, avoiding pillarization, ensuring the maritime cooperation could connect different issues and plans in ASEAN, but also providing important new ideas such as the AOIP plus. I think that's very interesting idea to push forward. And I also note that the group is very adaptive by having a strong response to the Middle East situation. A Black Sea Grain Initiative for the Middle East might be a very interesting idea that it can be pushed forward, and also how AMS and dialogue partners can help vulnerable countries with less fuel reserves. And I think this is very timely and important. And I think a few days ago, there are proposals or idea to call for an ASEAN +3 or ASEAN emergency meeting responding the current situation. And it might be interesting to put some of this recommendation, including the ones directly speaking to the emergency situation, to that. So maybe this vision group can be one of the force that could push that into reality. But we will leave the discussion on that further later after the presentation by other working groups. And now I am inviting Dr. Hafiz Hashim to present the result of the connectivity working group. Some of the points have already touched upon, as already mentioned by Dr. Adrian Angis. The working groups are pretty much overlapping in various issues, but I think, of course, it will be very interesting to look at where the overlaps is and how then we can combine the recommendations. Dr. Hafiz, time is yours.
All right, thank you, Dr. Safwan. First of all, it's great to be here, seeing all members and colleagues, to be able to discuss on a timely manner, especially on the grim time that Safwan was describing just now, earlier. Being the second speaker means that there's still a lot of points to be discussed, right? So, okay, connectivity. We had a very good discussion yesterday. And we saw that connectivity actually remains one of the central pillars for the AOIP because it translates ASEAN's cooperative vision into practical outcomes, right? It provides us the adoption that seeks to address the limitations. So we acknowledge that the ASEAN Connectivity Strategic Plan, that it has entered a transitional phase, which seeks to address the master plan on the ASEAN connectivity. Now, by strengthening infrastructure, institutional coordination that was laid out by the ACSP and people-to-people linkages, now we see that ASEAN can reinforce its role as the region that connects from the Indian Ocean to the Pacific Ocean. At the same time, during our discussion, we saw that connectivity today carries a growing strategic implication. Critical infrastructure, just like Dr. Adrian was mentioning as well, from maritime routes to digital networks, now is intersecting with supply chain resilience, economic security, and therefore geopolitical competition. So connectivity now is becoming increasingly as a regional security concern. So, critical infrastructure that is used by the normal population, submarine data cables, digital network, cross-border energy grids, maritime transport corridors are becoming strategic assets in an era of geopolitical competition. At the same time, these development blurs the line between economic connectivity and security governance. So the politicization creates vulnerabilities in digital infrastructure, maritime routes, and energy network that may directly affect the regional stability. So as a result, connectivity challenges, like what Adrian was saying, now overlap with the other priority areas under the AOIP, which includes maritime cooperation, SDGs, economic integration. So even though the ACSP, we appreciate the transition from MPAC to the ACSP, we still see that there's a lot of strong delivery mechanism that is capable of translating to its regional strategies into concrete flagship projects. So some of the, today, so we are presenting our policy recommendations, although it's not as comprehensive as the maritime pillar, but here are some of the 6 that we have came up with. Yes. So the first point that we came up with actually is about the emergency connectivity. So this one was a really interesting one. We described that we to use this emergency connectivity as a rapid response towards logistic mobilization system that coordinate ASEAN member countries in addressing disruptions that affects the human and economic security. So whether it be the supply chain disruption or natural disasters, this emergency connectivity can create some form of resource reserve system that is integrated within the existing mechanism framework. So it ensures that not only the stability of the supply chain, but also not as a shock towards implementing a newer mechanism. The second one is the energy connectivity. So as we have seen over the past week, that the Strait of Hormuz is being politicized, and it is actually affecting the supply chain across the globe. So we came up with this energy connectivity where developing a regional strategic oil reserve as opposed to a national strategic oil reserve can become a hub for ASEAN, and it involves national oil companies as opposed to private ones. Simultaneously, we also see that we should accelerate the ASEAN Power Grid initiative and utilize this 2025 Power Grid Financing Initiative to facilitate cross-border renewable energy trade. So we see that there's an urgent need towards renewable energy. We did discuss about nuclear energy as well, and Prof. Kitano had a very interesting mention about biogas. So yeah, we'll go into details on that later. Okay, the third one, we came up with the digital connectivity. So as we see over the past few years, the submarine data cables and pipelines are increasingly becoming politicized. So we suggest that we should implement a regional protocol for the protection of critical digital infrastructure to depoliticize the submarine data cables. And ASEAN should strengthen the data DIFA, Data Economy Framework Agreement, through shared data infrastructure, because we see that there's still government are not coordinating in unison on this. So it is also, we suggest that advisable to further enhance the ASEAN Smart Cities Network by adopting the concept of smart sharing city and developing new indicator systems, for instance, the Smart Mobility Index, to assess the performance of the smart cities, which was laid out in the ASEAN blueprint. So the fourth one is about the financial connectivity. During our discussion, we saw that there's a plethora of funding platforms that are available. However, it's still, how should I say this? It's still scattered. Yeah. So we suggested that by strengthening the regional platform, the financing platform, we should be coordinating with the ASEAN sovereign wealth funds, with multilateral development banks such as the AIIB, ADB, etc., and the asset infrastructure to mobilize diverse capital pools. One of the reasons why we mentioned this was because when sovereign wealth funds do decide to invest in something, or rather in a country, more often than not, multilateral development banks would see the value in it because of the legitimacy of the strength of the sovereign wealth funds. Yeah. So not only that, it will actually enhance the resilience of cross-border infrastructure and reducing the fragmentation among financing sources that helps to de-risk large-scale connectivity projects. The fifth recommendation that we made was the people-to-people connectivity. At the end of the day, connectivity is all about people-to-people as well. So we suggest that we should shift towards a problems-driven socio-cultural exchange that targets primary regional challenges, such as poverty alleviation, inequality, public health, and aging population, rather than general activities. So this should be coupled with enhanced cooperation in STEM and vocational reskilling to prepare the regional workforce for digital transition and supply chain upgrades. So we recognize the problems that we face currently and in the near future. Now, this point number 6 is a very interesting one. It's a conceptual connectivity. It is basically trying to mainstream the planetary health concept across the AOIP community pillar. Because if you see, again, it's Prof. Kitano's idea. It's basically, if we improve the planetary health, it's like a circling motion kind of thing. Yeah, it goes back to you. So that links to its human well-being, environmental integrity, integrating climate, health, and security agenda into one regional policy. So we've already been doing this. A healthy life, a better planet, basically. A better planet creates a healthy life. So a chain of connectivity in that sense. So we think that this vision may be operationalized through circular economy frameworks that promotes material circulation systems such as food waste, biogas, electricity, fertilizer, and battery recycling to ensure the long-term sustainability and resource of the region. Yeah, I think that's it for now, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hafiz. I actually would like to praise the presentation, but feel a bit inappropriate because I'm also part of the group, so I'm praising myself. But yes, indeed, I think connectivity is a very important pillar of the ASEAN outlook on Indo-Pacific, since it is where the confluence of the two seas are happening and concretely manifesting in this various connectivity initiatives. And I think the group has also outlined several recommendations quite comprehensively, although I think one highlight from the group is that because a lot of things are covered in the connectivity plan, ASEAN strategic connectivity plan. It is also important then to locate these initiatives under changing world, under new global volatility, and thus it is important to make priorities. It is because if we are making a lot of wish list, that will also create difficulty in allocating the resources effectively. So what the group was trying to do is highlighting which part of the connectivity should be prioritized, but at the same time also putting forth some new idea from the conceptual connectivity to the emergency connectivity, which I think stems from the discussion yesterday about also the challenge of responding to the crisis in Middle East. More than 1 million Filipino in the Middle East, 500,000 Indonesians and other Southeast Asian nationals in the Middle East, which create the need for coordinating emergency responses, etc. And we will go deeper and further in the discussion session. But now it is my duty to invite Dr. Jayan Menon to present the result from the SDGs working group. Please.
Okay, thank you, Shofan, and good morning, everyone. So Mo, I think, cannot join us, so I'll do the presentation on my own. Although, let me start by thanking the group, the team, for all their useful inputs yesterday, including honorary members like Watanabe-san, who joined us, and Arman from UNESCAP, who provided a very useful stocktake on progress with the SDGs, focusing on ASEAN countries. And most importantly to Afni for excellent work in drafting and pulling together all our deliberations, which made our job a lot easier. So, okay, so SDGs, as you can imagine, they're the ultimate cross-cutting theme, right? Covering everything from social issues, economic, even connectivity, infrastructure, and regional and global cooperation. So you've got the whole lot covered. And that, of course, presents its obvious challenges in trying to compress it down to a set of recommendations. That's one challenge. Of course, the other challenge is that, in a sense, the SDGs were set to be unachievable, right? There's no point setting goals that you can meet easily, because then what do you do after that? So, you've got things like eliminate poverty, remove hunger, and others are, they're more aspirational. So the point, I think, to bear in mind always is these are goals that are set not to be necessarily realized, and if you don't, it's not a failure, but to get as close as possible to these goals and to make progress. And it's, of course, it's a moving target, and it's an ongoing journey and challenge, right? And that has become more challenging recently. And we've heard about the global context already the last day and so, and today as well. The geopolitical tensions rising, we have trade wars and now real wars taking place. There's a lot of uncertainty. And also there's a growing isolationism that's crept in, led by the US approach under this current administration, but it's also, affecting other countries. Not all, but others are also questioning whether, they need to be as generous. And so the whole issue of finance comes into play as well. How much, there's been a fall in global aid flows, and so, getting the SDGs is an expensive project, and so how do we pay for it? These are all the challenges facing all countries. ASEAN has actually risen to this challenge perhaps better than most. It's performed comparatively well, even in the Asia Pacific, with no SDG showing any regression since 2015. They're still not on target to reach them by 2030, but they're not falling behind. And this is significant because, COVID obviously was a big shock that affected their progress. And just as the recovery was setting in, we've had all these other geopolitical and protectionist problems to deal with. And on top of that, of course, you've got technological change, climate change taking place in the background. And these are also disproportionately affecting the vulnerable communities in developing countries. So there's increased risk of rising inequality both within and between countries. And you can't pursue sustainable growth without peace and stability. And these can no longer be taken for granted in the current environment. Okay. So I think against this gloomy backdrop, ASEAN probably has an even bigger role to play now in sticking together and in fact strengthening their regional cooperation to achieve these SDGs and also to contribute to the future agenda. 2030 is almost here, closer than it sounds. And so, like before, very soon I think we'll have a new set of goals announced, a new agenda that will take away or distract from the fact that we haven't achieved these goals, but a new set of goals will need to be worked towards. So let me now go through the policy recommendations that we have. There are 5 that we have come up with, and under each there's 2 or 3 actions that we propose. The first is what, in a sense, I've already talked about, which is trying to accelerate SDG progress under a challenging global environment, which threatens to get more difficult before we get to 2030. Okay, so the first action point is to focus efforts on sustaining and accelerating progress in areas where improvements have been observed, while paying particular attention to social and environment SDGs. I think all of the technological change and the global geopolitical risks are going to affect social and environmental SDGs particularly. We know that the US now is no longer interested in climate change, and this is a big blow to the global public good agenda for the environment. So there's a need for regional groups to try and fill that gap. The second action point is that it recognizes that although SDGs are primarily a national concern and a national objective, greater regional cooperation and policy coordination is required to support continued progress. And this relates to what I was just saying. So that's the first policy recommendation and 2 action points. The second is paying for it all. So strengthening financing for sustainable development. Here we have 3 action points. The first is, again, because of this climate of reduced aid flows, we need to fill that gap by promoting greater domestic resource and revenue mobilization. So you have to do that, you encourage improved revenue collection systems and better alignment of fiscal policies, including rationalization of subsidies with sustainable development priorities. Here we discussed the apparent contradictions in some countries where they're pursuing sustainability in various ways while still providing huge subsidies to fossil fuels, right? Malaysia, Indonesia, and many other examples. And this is, not only expensive, but, it's contradictory. So that's something that will have to be addressed, I think, especially in this climate of falling international resources. And I think related to that is to try and utilize diverse sources of funding. We cannot give up on the bilateral, multilateral, international banks, development banks, and philanthropists, right, to help leverage private sector financing and impact investments. And I think here the group recognized that the private sector will have to play an increasingly important role in achieving the SDGs. The third policy recommendation is addressing inequality and structural development challenges. I think the lasting legacy of both the digital and AI revolution will be rising inequality both within and between countries. And there are many other forces that are contributing to this rise in inequality, including climate change that disproportionately affects the poor. So the first action point is to implement policies that address these directly, the widening gaps within and between countries, and to do that to strengthen investment in health and education nationally, but supported by regional cooperation to try and promote inclusive and equitable development outcomes. Right. Now, I'm aware of time, so let me quickly go on to the fourth policy recommendation, and that's promoting peace, stability, and effective institutions. As I mentioned, you can't achieve any of these things without peace and stability and institutions that will ensure peace and stability, all of which are currently under threat, right? So we need to address the rising global security risks, including regional tensions, such as the Thailand-Cambodia situation, which is not good for either country or the region or the world. And of course, we have Myanmar as well as a concern. And this will, derail everything if we can't ensure peace and stability. And the second action point is to strengthen specifically implementation of SDG 16, which is peace, justice, and strong institutions, including more strategic utilization of existing institutions such as the ASEAN Institute for Peace and Reconciliation. Right. Finally, and this is the one that looks forward, is strengthening ASEAN's role or voice in shaping the post-2030 development agenda. Right. Now, ASEAN, I think, has improved or increased its voice globally. I remember when I first started working on ASEAN, maybe 30-odd years ago, whenever you said ASEAN, they thought you mispronounced Asian. But that's no longer the case. Everyone knows ASEAN now. So engage ASEAN and regional partners to play a greater role in developing these future development agenda, including the post-SDG frameworks, and to ensure that Asia and ASEAN have a stronger voice in shaping global sustainable priorities, development priorities, in line with the ASEAN Community Vision 2045. So with the proliferation of these sorts of programs and visions, there is a need for greater alignment to ensure consistency, reduce overlap, and to ensure that we all push in the same direction. So with that, let me stop there, Chair, and look forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jayan Menon. I think the presentation by the SDGs working group reminds us that SDGs is still there, and it is still creating a milestone in which countries can actually direct its attention and efforts towards it. And it is also interesting to note, and this is new to me, because usually when we are talking about aspirational goals to be mentioned, to be put there without if we are not achieving that, it's not a failure. I think it's a very ASEAN way. So the UN, in a way, has been ASEANized to some extent. Yeah? And I think it's a powerful reminder also that amidst what Dr. Jayan Menon and I think other colleagues here mentioned, this grim world, this gloomy world, whatever you call it, the outlook was negative, but we need to have some sense of direction, and the SDGs is one of that sense of direction which the global community has agreed. I also note that the group has put forth important recommendations which identifies not only what are the policies should be taken, but also action points, and I think that's very important path forward. We will have more discussion after all of the working group presented their proposal, their policy recommendation, but now we are going to invite the fourth working group, the economy working group, and I would like to invite Dr. Sinina Sermchip to present the recommendations by the economy working group. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shofan. So, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. So, I'm glad to be here with the AOIP working group. For our group here, we're talking about economy, and so thanks to the team. So, we have Professor Shinoda, Michael, and also Anita Prakash from area, and right now she with the Research Lab Asia, who have the input for our group. So far, we have seen 3 pillars. So this is the fourth one. We can see the repeating word, intertwining topic that we are related together. Just to make it quickly, so I would say that Indo-Pacific is one of the key engine of growth for the economy right now. And with the shift in geoeconomics, it's kind of like affect the region. both in terms of stability, competitiveness, and also how to achieve the long-term growth. By that one, I would say for our group here, we kind of like have three aspects in mind. The first one is how to address the short-run issues, how to pursue the long-run goal, and also how to make it really happen. Because we talk about a lot about how to, like make it concrete and practical. And by that one, so the context inside, I think the first part we all agree about the vulnerability of the region, given the fact that we have over-reliance on the certain market and how the world is kind of like uncertainty happening right now. So with that one, diversity is, diversifying is one of the things that we have in mind. The other 3 points that it is the key issues for AOIP, and also talking a lot about those issues in ASEAN is about the supply chain resilience, digital transformation, and also the green transformation. So we're gonna address on those issues in our policy recommendation. So let's move on to the policy recommendation for this one. Let's portray what we're gonna talk here. It's gonna be under 5 points in total. So the first one, we think about economic diversification. By this one here, the challenges that facing a lot is the vulnerability, as I mentioned before. So diversifying trade and also related issues is what we should do. The second one, why don't we look at existing FTA that we have on hand? I think the situation right now, it reminds us to just sit down and also taking stock where we are. We all agree about those FTA is on the table, it's effective, but how much do we use it? So utilization rate is what we think about. And also, like the connectivity, the linkage between these 3, also mentioned by Anita as well. The mega FTA and also the our friend from EU. So ASEP, CPTPP, and also the EU, how do we connect and link them together? And when we're talking about helping, like the business and also the economy keep growing, but don't forget to think about free and fair rule-based trade regime, and that also help the SME as well. The last point for this topic is that how to strengthening the multilateral rule-based economic order, especially for the WTO, to think about rule-making and dispute settlement. Let's move on to the second point. Those are the key issues in ASEAN as well. How about the supply chain growth and resilience? So we suggest that we should enhance the supply resilience by reviewing and upgrading existing regional economic integration. We can start from something close to ASEAN, that is ASEAN Economic Community, extended to ASEAN +1, and also the bigger one is the ASEP, CPTPP, and including the IPEF there. How do we include supply chain resilience explicitly in those contexts? The second point, we think about something concrete and make it really happen. So maybe negotiate about the sector-specific resilience is something that we can do. Those sectors, for example, we can talk about critical mineral, semiconductor, EV and battery, and also other strategic industry. NTM non-tariff measures still the issue, especially during the time with the digital economy. So standard harmonization, how to align with the international standard, because the world is kind of like connecting all together. So this is something that we can add into the how the economy in the region can keep growing. And the last part here, trade safeguard, how to improve the rule of origin, how to address the transshipment issues, and also enhancing technical consultation. So this one does not only limited to ASEAN, but also we need to connect with our partner in order to protect legitimate regional supply chain. So let's move on to the point number 3, that is a digital transformation. And right now we add the data governance into the picture as well. In this point here, we have a 5 detailed insight. The first one is how to prioritize the DFA. So we have heard about DFA from both the connectivity and also the, like sustainable development, not only in our region, but also to our friend outside the external partner, because the connectivity is, like the trade doesn't only limited within only ASEAN. The second point, how to think about promoting the common rule and trust in terms of the data flow. So transparency, security, and accountability is even more important, especially the time of the AI advancement now. So we have to think about the development at different pace and space in terms of different ASEAN country and also the country in Indo-Pacific. So the fragmentation can be one obstacle to propel this kind of like digital development. The next one we can think about responsible AI is, we see many progress inside the country in Indo-Pacific, but some countries still need more help. So with that one, the regulatory capacity building, AI governance, risk management, and also for sure, digital literacy, we should enhance those kind of cooperation. Another one is to strengthening the regional capacity building. Think about the standard cybersecurity. We still need to, think about that kind of like development. The last one, digital also intertwined with the physical economy as well. So one of the key part is about the financial services, including the financial payment system. It can be one thing that we have to think more how to manage because the transaction, we have to pay money. So that's why it's the backbone for the trade in the region. Let's move on to the fourth point, which is very related to the previous three pillars here, sustainability. So we're thinking about from economic lens, sustainability is also important. The first point, how to share the green standard and guideline to support interoperability. In terms of business right now, how to operate internationally is very important. We see those first from both the digital dimension and also in the green dimension. So this is something that we suggest. The next one, how to have the joint capacity building and also the technical cooperation. I'm sure that you heard the repeating word, how to develop the people, because the people at the center is a key part for all the story here. And the next one is think about what's happening right now, how to respond to the Middle East situation. We also propose that we should promote the regional energy connectivity through the cross-border power trade, grid interconnection, smart grid, energy storage, and also the project preparation to support for inclusive energy transition initiative. And urgently, we're also thinking about strengthening the regional cooperation for a sustainable and secure energy supply by establishing more resilient energy stockpiling and mutual support system, particularly to address the energy crisis. The last point to make it really happen and, up to date with what's happening right now, I think the first point we fully agree and we emphasize that, we should, given the situation that dynamic and rapid change in Indo-Pacific, so ASEAN may need to review and strengthening the AOIP to ensure that it remains relevant for ASEAN and also its partner. And in order to address the challenges and opportunity in the region, especially in the light of the forthcoming, the 10th anniversary of AOIP in 2029. Besides that, to make it happen, we're thinking about ensuring the AOIP-related economic cooperation to align with the ASEAN Community Vision 2045, and is supported by clearer deliverable, measurable indicator, and stronger cross-sectoral coordination across economic, digital infrastructure, and sustainability agenda. So how to make AOIP explicit in the picture? So this is one goal that we're thinking about. Another point is to strengthening the implementation capacity to enhancing support for the ASEAN Secretariat, the closer engagement with the development partner and financial institution, and more systematic monitoring AOIP-related project and outcome. And also the last point is how to institutionalize strong cross-pillar. So I think we heard about cross-pillar, how to overcome that challenges. So the coordination of the cross-pillar is what we need in order to respond to the growing economic security nexus, including more regular joint work between economic and foreign policy track, being used to coordinate the ASEAN body and to strengthening the secretariat to support the cross-sectional issue. So I think that will be all for our group here for the economy pillar. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Asinin. And I think what I really like about the presentation by the Economy Working Group is that it's very systematic. It identifies the problem, the issue to address, and what are the solution to address that issue and how then to make it happen. And so it's very comprehensive, but at the same time is also providing us with clear pathways forward. What I noticed from all of the presentations of the working group today is that there are a lot of interconnectedness between the pillars. We hear again and again issues, for example, about supply chain, resilience, issues about digital connectivity, issues about critical infrastructure, even ship-to-ship or transshipment, very detailed, but it mentioned in different working groups. I think this shows that the pillars themselves are interconnected in nature, and thus it is important to always bring this perspective forward. But at the same time, I think this also shows that the problems, the challenges is really there. If people from the 4 working group identifies that there are these challenges and everyone is putting forth recommendations to address those challenges surely are real and really need to be taken seriously. Another note that I take from the discussion is that we may after this, I mean, looking at these different recommendations, but also overlapping or interconnected, and look about how pushing that forward together. But also, there are several recommendations in different working groups which talks to the current situation directly, and that might be interesting if we could highlight that as something that we could push or to call to the leaders in the Indo-Pacific to really follow up on. Another side note is that I noticed that all of the presentations are unusual in the term that usually if we are in a conference, it's very difficult for the moderators to stop the speakers to talk beyond the time. But today we see that the presentations are effectively delivered, so we have several minutes available. So I think it's very good because that means an invitation for a lively discussion. So for that invitation, I would like to invite the active participants here to give their feedbacks and comments. Michael, Ambassador, please.
Thank you, Pak Sofian. Just a couple of comments on the maritime security recommendations. I think when it comes to capacity building or trainings or information sharing, it's fine. But if we think about scenarios of actual incidents and how we can cooperate, I think there is a severe limitation there because issues of sovereignty, issues of jurisdictions in the maritime domain. So this is, I think, the main challenge when we talk about dealing with the actual situation. And I think that is something that we should keep in mind, and most likely it has to be dealt with by the country concerned. And if it has no capacity or lack of capacity, probably it will seek support, but most likely it will go through bilateral channel. And it's much more efficient rather than going through the regional mechanism. So I think this is something that we should keep in mind, and perhaps how to deal with, how to facilitate within the limitation of that kind of hurdles, the sovereignty jurisdictions issues. Second, on comment on connectivity, I think we can, in terms of the issues relating to connectivity, I think there are 2 separate types. We can see it from the 2 separate clusters. The first cluster will be dealing with the national infrastructure and institution, which is the main building block for connectivity. Yeah, because without an existence of national infrastructure and institutions, we cannot talk about region-wide connectivity. So, and they have a set of issues that are particular to this kind of cluster. And each country has their own different issues as well in terms of developing the national infrastructure and institutions. And then the second cluster will be building the cross-border connectivity built upon the existing national infrastructure, I think. And even when the issue may be the same, for instance, funding, but I think the nature of funding issues for national project and for projects that are cross-border and multinational in nature is quite different as well, right? So I think this is also a way we have to take into account when we deal with connectivity issues. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. So to respond to the maritime group and the connectivity group, is there any other comments and response? Pak Dino?
Yeah, well, thank you. I really enjoyed all the presentations. Obviously, there's a lot of work and thoughts that have been given to it. Just two questions. I think this was on the sorry, power grid belongs to who? Connectivity. Yeah, that's you, right, Hafiz? Yeah. Okay. So. I'm really wondering, we've been talking about power grid forever, ASEAN power grid. Why on earth is it so slow? And it seems like 10 years from now, we're still going to be talking about it. I mean, what can be done to establish this? Is that not enough political will, or there is political will, but implementation is a problem, or the policy coordination is difficult? What is going on? So, I mean, I agree totally it should be accelerated, but I think we should understand, and which I don't understand, why is it so difficult? I've been out of the foreign ministry for 11 years, and I remember even 11 years later, we were actively talking about it, right? So that's one. Adrian, again, great presentation. I'm interested in the idea of countries that have a surplus sharing their surplus, right? But I'm just putting myself as the president of Indonesia, right? So look at me, I'm the president of Indonesia, right? I don't look it, but we have 25 days. Well, first, small countries is not gonna give it to big countries, bigger countries, right? Singapore or Brunei, I don't think they're gonna give to larger countries, right? So the assumption is only larger countries that will share it. But I'm the president of Indonesia, and I only have 25 days, right? Afni told me 25 days, right, Afni? Yeah, 25, right? I mean, I got 280 million people, and I'm not gonna give 1 day of it, right? That's just the reality, right? Again, I don't know who are the bigger, in ASEAN, who are the bigger economies. Indonesia is definitely one, right? I'm not sure if how long is Vietnam's and so on. So I totally sympathize with the idea, but I'm just thinking if this is an issue where each surplus ASEAN country will think, I can't even risk 1 day to give away to another. Yeah. So how do we get over this political, what do you call it, this political hurdle? Yeah.
Thank you very much, Pak Dino. Is there any, Shu Song, please.
Thank you. I have some comment on the maritime group. I think in general, the recommendations are very conducive for the peace and the development of South China Sea. However, I got a little bit of concern on the 21st recommendation that you have is about establishing the AOIP Plus or enhanced AOIP to encourage more involvement of the external partner or unilateral blocks to into the non-sensitive areas like the humanitarian assistance on the sea. I think I appreciate the general tone and intention of this article. And I also appreciate that you try not to make it very fast, like first step just into very sensitive area. Instead of that, you try to use an incremental approach and touch upon the non-sensitive area first. With that said, I think this article still risks contradicting the very fundamental principle of AOIP, that is inclusivity. And it could risk encouraging the bloc confrontation or the excluding some of the major powers in the region. So I think despite I really respect this good intention, I think probably you could consider make it more inclusive. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I think it's very important feedback also. So now I'm going to the working group to respond. Since everyone here is actually part of the working group, I think it is also open for the other members of the working groups to respond. But I go first to the speakers. So I'll give it to Dr. Adrian for responding first.
I think let me first begin with Pak Dino's comment. I think, right, so I think for our strategic sharing of reserves, I think that was clearly aspirational, right, sort of in terms of you know, how countries that have a surplus energy reserve would look to share is clearly a political decision that would have to be made by countries on an individual and bilateral basis. I don't know, right, if we can sort of think further down the road where the region would have a regional energy security that could be, I think, right, sort of part of the move, again, right, to accelerate the ASEAN power grid, and not just the power grid, but also the green energy transition. So I think really, you know, what we see in the conflict in the Middle East really is the inflection point, right, for the region to begin, right, seriously the green energy transition, and to Song's point about, what is it, I think point 21, right, I think, right, again, right, the group, again, right, sort of had no intention of being exclusionary, and I think it was, again, I think Kelvin who reminded our working group about sort of the AOIP plus concept. So again, right, sort of, you know, whether we took the idea of unilaterals not as exclusionary, but right, sort of during our discussion, I think, right, our working group said, right, I mean, if we think of right, sort of the broadest term of unilaterals, actually the region has, right, sort of hundreds of unilaterals. So, right, sort of we took it in that spirit, right, of including basically everyone, right, and not in the spirit of exclusion. I don't know if anybody else from our working group wants to comment, Ambassador.
Please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. In fact, this is my propositions for the working group. We are trying to giving more vitality to the AOIP. As it stands, we count on the closer circle. I mean, those who interested in supporting AOIP. What the AOIP need is more outward looking to address some of the very staggering challenges. So the idea, like the chair of the working group mentioned, we debate about these issues, my propositions, and I think the idea is inclusiveness is within that context. Like the chair just explained, we do not specifically mention any minilateral platform we want to engage with. In fact, it's a lesson learned, frankly. There are issues, other framework that AOIP can learn from it by doing its our own task to try to operationalize effectively the idea. So this I wanted just to add to what have been explained by the chair. Thank you.
Please, Bryce.
Yeah, I'll just reiterate that. In fact, there was some discussion as to whether we should name certain minilaterals and have them in there. And it should be noted that there were minilaterals that we thought would look somewhat confrontational and would be unlikely to join because of their exclusionary nature anyway. So that paragraph is designed to be very inclusive. And as we said, there's a tendency within the literature and within discussions like this to focus on certain high-profile minilaterals, which tends to detract from the fact that there are hundreds and hundreds of these arrangements around the region that add to a security tapestry, an inclusive security tapestry of the Indo-Pacific, and including those where possible was the intention of that paragraph, I think.
Thank you very much. Although I'm not part of the maritime working group, I would like also to a bit jumping in. I think both views are starting with good intention. I mean, and I understand the worry from Dr. Xue Song. But I also do think that rather than bringing the AOIP into exclusionary tendency, it could also go to a more positive direction. I mean, it could be, if done right, it could be the way AOIP socializing this exclusionary minilaterals into inclusive way of the AOIP. So rather than being influenced and defined by the exclusionary characteristics, what is expected, what I get from the paragraph is that we hope to socialize this exclusionary minilaterals into more ASEAN-centered values of inclusivity. So I think maybe we could add or highlight more points in that particular recommendation, that the inclusive characteristics needs to be like the defining guidance, that the inclusion of the minilaterals are aimed at sustaining and maintaining the inclusive nature of Indo-Pacific. But of course, we will continue the discussion maybe after this. But I'm now moving to Dr. Hafiz. You have a lot of questions too.
This one?
No, two. You have from Pak Michael and Pak Dino. Great. The comments on the two clusters, the national infrastructure institutions and the cross-border institutions.
Okay. First, thank you, Pak Dino.
I think both are connected because ASEAN grid is cross-border.
Cross-border, yeah. So let me just address this issue about the power grid that Pak Dino highlighted just now. Interestingly enough, yesterday during our conversation, our discussion, I mean, so the external speaker mentioned this, saying that it was all fun and games when talk about power grid until money is involved. Yeah, the moment they describe, they mention about tariff. So who is the one to dictate the tariff? Then it becomes a recurring problem. So from what I see in that sense is that we cannot depoliticize the ASEAN power grid and decouple it from domestic interests, because at the end of the day, power equals to money, and energy equals to money, and if it supports the national economic development, then they would want to bank on it. So therein lies the problem, right? And talking about the cross-border facilities as well, again, where the problem lies? Money, right? So looking at the blueprint, the power grid, for instance, financing, there's a lot of projects that are that's involved in this, and it actually requires around $200 billion, right, to support this power grid. So the question remains, who's going to support that, right? And if we are able to depoliticize this, maybe it can move at a faster rate, right? So far, right now, as we can see, there's still a lack, I wouldn't say lack of political will. There's a lot of political will. It's just that a lot of political will, but also there's a lot of domestic interest, right? That comes into play. So, the challenge will be, can we supersede this expectation? We've also discussed about the nuclear facility. I heard that the nuclear, it's actually mobile, right?
Small modular reactor.
The small, modular reactor. So that one is actually really interesting as well when we discuss about that. But the problem lies in the technical know-how as well for ASEAN. So that can be part of in the ASEAN power grid. But again, who are the countries that are that have this technical expertise? That's only a limited amount of countries that are operating nuclear power. So there's a lot of positive, but again, as with any ASEAN initiative, it all starts from money. No money, no talk. So I think that's it for now.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. In Indonesia, we have the saying, tak ada logistik, tak ada logika. You know, there's no logic without logistics.
But I want to add that of all. Sorry, I also want to add, for every issues that we discuss, energy is the most politically sensitive. That's the key. So money is of course important, but it's just very politically sensitive. That's the issue also. Yeah.
Yes, and the building blocks at the national level itself is already contested also politically, right? Because a lot of domestic groups are also competing about the energy infrastructure, etc. So I think that's a very interesting discussion. Is there any? Okay, I have two more comments, but actually the committee has already mentioned that the time is until 9:45, but I think it will be good to have more two comments. Please, Professor. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. On the issue of the relation, the unilateral arrangement and exclusiveness. Of course, if we picked up the single unilateral or bilateral, it's quite exclusive in nature. But what's happening in this Asia Pacific is that there are many many unilateral and bilateral arrangements are emerging, and those unilateral are networked together, and as a result, contributing to strengthen the regional structure and dealing with specific issues like maritime issue or economic cooperation and so forth. So that is not, exclusive nature. So if you talk about the unilateral, the nature of unilateral, you should, see a broader picture of mutual connection of variety of the unilateral and the bilateral arrangement. That networking is a quite unique, characteristics of international relations. So maritime, security, maritime groups are focusing on that, in the context of so-called regionalization of maritime security and networking of variety of cooperation. Yeah, cooperate. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Kikuchi. Dr. Prakash, please.
This just want to add what Dr. Rafi's talked about SMR, small model reactor. India is studying small model reactor, and it's planned to implement SMR. So like ASEAN can, like it is in the developing stage, so ASEAN can look at what India has been doing right now. So that can be learning experience, because India is also planning to do that. SMR is coming in big way in India. One is indigenously developed, and there are certain SMR has been imported from the US. So India is taking a mixed approach. ASEAN can learn from India because it's starting up in India. So it will be a good way for both ASEAN and India to cooperate.
Thank you very much. That's very important input. Okay, one more, Dr. Tai. Okay. Okay, yes. One, and then I will return to all the speakers, please.
Yeah, my quick comment is this one. My observation is, I think, these four groups, the issues and topics, obviously we have to consider one more dimension, that is the time horizon. I think some groups' issues like SDGs or maritime obviously requires much longer time horizon. I mean, for example, climate change. Yeah, we are talking about 2050 carbon neutrality, or by end of this century, what happens, and so on. But on the other hand, economy or connectivity requires a little bit more short-term and immediate or mid-term requirements, so that maybe somehow, we think about this time dimension issue, how to implement this one. Second one, I don't know, among those four working groups, I think their own statement and, the policy actions seems to be very good, but obviously some of issues overlap, and we talk about the social dimension issues, but on the other hand, some other group talk about, economy talk about the sustainability. So this overlap or cross-cutting issues, how to coordinate? I think it's not each working group's issue. I think so. Maybe AOIP secretariat or the chairs were steering group something. They try to integrate and somehow make the overall AOIP report or statement seem to be more comprehensive or integrated. I think that's another round of discussion maybe within AOIP group, the secretariat. That may be needed. I think that's my quick observation.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tai. I think it's a very important reminder, first on the time dimension, and second, on how to consolidate the recommendations from four working groups, since there are many overlaps and interconnections. So I'm going to all of the speakers to give their final comments, as well as their concluding remarks for this session. Please, maybe from Dr. Jayan Menon. I'll go just from the left to...
Okay. Obviously, our presentation was perfect because there's no comments. So.
Well, you have comment on the time.
That's from my own member of my group. So I would propose that he does the coordination and the consolidation. No, I think that's a valid point, and it's something that at the end, when we've agreed on the recommendations, someone does need to look at the consistency across the different working groups and the recommendations as well. I only want to make one other point, and that I think is, I think, there's great diversity within ASEAN, as we all know, and so there's a lot of unevenness in country-by-country performances that is highlighted in our particular group on SDGs. We can see that, performance is very varied. And I think this is a challenge of trying to find, a regional approach or a set of recommendations that tries to bridge that gap between the different countries, and that is something also to bear in mind at the end of the day. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Dr. J. Dr. Adrian?
Thanks, Chofwan. I think for our Maritime Cooperation Working Group, what we really tried to do in our policy recommendations yesterday, sort of what guided our discussions, was the working towards a sort of maritime governance architecture, right? So I think our policy recommendations were really geared towards that. But at the same time, right, sort of the comments by Pak Denny, but Dino are all well taken, that, as we work towards this maritime governance architecture, right, the geopolitical, political, jurisdictional sovereignty issues have to be taken seriously. But at the same time, in terms of right, sort of the maritime domain, the maritime commons as being part of, right, not just the regional, but the wider Indo-Pacific commons, right, I think touches upon all the different pillars that we talked about, right? Everything from, environment and sustainability to energy and security and so on and so forth. So I think, right, sort of as we move forward, I think, our working group will try to, again, sort of forward this maritime governance architecture, and also to work with the other working groups to integrate some of the recommendations.
Thank you very much, Dr. Adrian. Dr. Hafiz?
All right, thank you. I think there's a reason why our connectivity pillar is called connective. So the level of integrated problems that we saw from all the other pillars, right, it just highlights how ASEAN is currently facing multitude of problems that are just overlapping. And one thing that we wanted to discuss, or rather we discussed yesterday, was that we tend to forget about the people-to-people exchange, right? At the end of the day, when people do have a conversation, a constructive conversation, it goes a long way, right? And of course, from people to people, and then it becomes a digital problem as well. So imagine the new generation, Gen Z, having not being able to access their TikToks. I'm pretty sure the Strait of Hormuz is going to be a cakewalk.
Well, the government of Indonesia just announced 16 years old as the limit.
So, yeah. You can see how the problems can basically escalate, right? And with that being said, I think we do need to also solve about the ASEAN power grid issue, because at the end of the day, power actually, is the engine of the ASEAN bloc. So without being able to resolve that, at the very least, discuss about it openly, and maybe, it's going to be difficult times ahead for the AOIP.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hafiz. Dr. Sinina, please.
Thank you. So I think so far we have seen how the world is changing, and also for our region, Indo-Pacific. I would say that given the uncertainty that's happening right now, we have seen from the past to the present, but we don't know what's going to come next into the future. I think we can conclude in a way that, I mean, from me and also our group, we're thinking about two aspects that we should move forward to. The first one is you have seen that we have diversifying things to lower the risk, including in terms of connectivity, economy, and so on. And secondly, what we can do maybe more or the most is thinking about strengthening the region. So I think this is something that we can manage to work on. And to do that, if I borrow something that I'm working on is about digital trade, so it goes down to the connectivities, both the digital connectivity and also for ASEAN, we also have the ASEAN connectivity. So I think it narrowed down to three main parts that we should develop. The first one is about infrastructure. So it's also talking about the power grid and also how the economy, how the logistics, how the system get connecting. Secondly, for the people, I agree with Afis as well, that the people in terms of the skill, in terms of how to make them like competent to be able to understand what's going on and how to handle and manage to lower the risk. And also the last point, which is become more and more important now today, is go to the regulation, rule, and also the governance. We see clearly from the digital governance, and right now it go to the AI governance. So it's not only about drafting the regulation, but how to equip the staff and the people in the ASEAN to be able to catch up with, how the world is changing so fast in order to handle what's going to come next, and we don't know what's going to be next, something like that. So I would think that that is how we conclude for the fundamental of the development for the region, both in terms of diversifying to lower the risk right now and also to strengthening our region for the prosperity and growing together. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Growing together to strengthen the region. I think that's very important message to all of us, not only in this room, but in the whole Indo-Pacific, including our policymakers and leaders. I think it's very difficult to be optimistic in today's world, but I think what is happening in these 2 days discussion of the AOIP Vision Group Conference is actually showing that despite all of these challenges, we can always find ways forward when we gather our minds, our forces, our optimism, our vision together. And of course, it will not be easy, but I really like what is happening in these 2 days. The discussions are frank and open, and not only frank and open, but also then pushed forward with good intention and vision to address these multitudes of challenges amidst this geopolitical and geoeconomic tensions. So despite the difficulty of being optimistic, I think there is also no reason of losing our optimism. We see that there are pathways forward, there are things that can be done together, and hopefully the Vision Group could be the force which help the region to move forward in a better direction, and that could help the world to regain its optimism. Thank you very much for joining us today. I am very thankful to be part of this esteemed group, and after this, hopefully we could consolidate the recommendations into one document, and I think the organizing committee will give us further guidance. Thank you very much, and see you in the next opportunity. Thank you very much.
Let's give a big round of applause. Thank you, Dr. Sofwan, and huge thank you as well to all the delegates for your contributions throughout the discussions. And now for our closing reflections, we would like to invite Ambassador Masato Watanabe from groups to share a few remarks. Ambassador, you may have the floor.
Thank you very much. Allow me to start with my personal note. I would like to thank Dr. Dino for inviting myself and other members of this group for the wonderful dinner. I think the name of the restaurant is called Mano Beach House, right? I remember that when I was working as a minister, counselor in charge of development economy here in Indonesia, I visited that restaurant with my family. It's a wonderful place, and thank you very much for bringing me to the restaurant. It was a wonderful experience, and nice talking with our friends of this group. Now, it was a very difficult time to have this conference this year. However, attending yesterday's sessions, I found that the comments, opinions expressed by all the participants, of course, they have diversing different angles, perspectives, because they are coming from different fields, country. But all of those comments and opinions are very much interesting and enlightening for me, and I believe for everybody in this room. And yesterday's input from external experts was really helped us having extensive and in-depth discussion in each group. Having heard today's presentation of the draft policy recommendations, I wish to express my gratitude to all the chairs of the 4 working group and Dr. Sofwan for organizing this work. I really appreciate the subsequent comments from all the participants. The homework for the organizers is to how to deliver this finding and outcome to the ASEAN. And I think for that, we will discuss with Dr. Dino and the FPCI how to follow up. But thank you very much, everybody, for joining us for this very important meeting. Thank you.
Let's give a big round of applause. Thank you, Ambassador. And before we officially conclude the conference, we would like to invite Dr. Dino Patijalal, the founder and chairman of FPCI, to deliver the closing remarks.
Sure. Well, first, thank you, everybody, for joining. I think this is definitely, I think, in my view, worth the efforts for all of you to come here, all the way from your home countries. And I think the discussions were very rich and gave us a lot of food for thought, but a lot of policy recommendations. I have a couple of random points that came up as I listened to these the discussions that we've had today. So again, it's not structured, but simply would just like to outline them randomly. Yeah. First, look, I know there's a sense of concern, and some in my country are panicking, in fact, about what is going on and how is the oil price going to impact our economy and our politics. Again, I said that there may even be social unrest if this gets prolonged and so on, right? But I want ASEAN to be reminded that we've really come a long way and we've had a lot worse, right? You remember when I was a mid-career diplomat or junior diplomat, growing up with Michael there, and Southeast Asia was at war. You know, remember the Vietnam War? We were all very scared, you know. Cambodian conflict, ASEAN was divided into two, and so on, you know, and we really felt that we did not have control of our region, right? This was a very violent and very bloody region, and that's behind us now, right? No matter what's going on in the Middle East, we are in control of our region now. You know, the region is united, 11 countries. ASEANization of Southeast Asia has been completed with Timor-Leste joining and so on. So we really have good assets and good control, I don't know if control is the right word, of our region, right? So I think that's very special, right? And it's very different than how we felt in 70s and 80s and so on. So that's how I just want to put it out there. And secondly, I remember, again, when I joined the Foreign Ministry, my Director General at the time, I was assistant to Director General for Political Affairs of the Foreign Ministry. He said to me, Dino, when you look at the region, there are just 3 levels of analysis, right? Pak Wiryono, yeah, you remember? Yeah, he's still alive now. He said 3 levels for ASEAN to grow. One is the context of relations among the great powers, right? And second, the relations between regional countries and the great powers, right? And third, the relations among the countries in the region, among Southeast Asian countries, right? So those 3 levels of analysis must always be present in how we try to move the region forward, right? And contexts have changed, landscapes have changed, and among the 3 levels, we have improved our position. Not much we can do on relations among the great powers, right? US-China, US-Russia, China-Russia, they move on their own, right? But in terms of our relations with the great powers, definitely we have moved quite far, right? You know, the establishment of the East Asia Summit, right? The ASEAN dialogue partner relationships, you know, with Japan, with China, with the United States, with Russia, with Europe, and so on. And especially the one that we have most control of is the relations among Southeast Asian countries, right? So again, our position have moved on quite significantly in terms of 3 levels of analysis, which remains valid today and which I think will remain valid 10 years and 20 years from now, right? Another point is, look, let's be clear that in the AOIP, the 4 areas of cooperation were designated as the most obvious areas of cooperation, right? Maritime is very important, and there's a lot of scope for cooperation, connectivity, SDG, and so forth, and economic cooperation. I think the thinking was, look, these things will work if the strategic context is present, right? Right. And we had assumed at the time in 2019, again, this was before the Russian invasion of Ukraine, before wars in the Middle East, and so on. You know, things were looking interestingly positive around that time, yeah, around 2019, yeah. And that's what's worrying and missing now. You know, what if at the strategic context, things are just getting worse and no trust more appetite for rivalries and confrontation. And what happens here at the 4 areas of practical cooperation, right? So even though we are able to do some things, we may not go very far because of the strategic context. And again, I hope I'm wrong on this. But that's what worries me now. And this is why I think the Trump-Xi Jinping summit at the end of the month is going to be particularly interesting, because it would signal, look, with whatever's going on in Europe and the Middle East, would U.S.-China relations improve? And improve that would be beneficial to AOIP, right? Again, we don't know the answer to that. We don't know how China is going to see the visit and so on. We don't know what Trump's ambition will be for that very important G2 summit, and we'll see. Yeah. Another point is Indo-Pacific assumes Pacific Ocean and Indian Ocean are intertwined, right? Are just one strategic theater. This is why Japan came up with FOIP, right? This is why India is saying this also, because, hey, we are here in the Indian Ocean, but we're inseparable from what happens in the Pacific Ocean. This is why Americans came up with FOIP also. And this is also the underlying strategic thinking behind AOIP, the ASEAN vision for Indo-Pacific. That's being tested now with what happened in the Indian Ocean between the US and Iran, If the Indian Ocean is important to the AOIP, right, what is the ASEAN response? Right? If ASEAN is moot, then, it's going to be a problem. And I say this because even India, which has said and claimed to be the net security provider, right? Again, at Raisina, where I was last week, even Jay Shankar was very careful about choosing his words. And the Iran ship just left India. It's in international waters, but in the Indian Ocean, right, of which India claimed to be net security provider, right? So even the most relevant regional country in South Asia is just grappling with how to respond to this, right? But I do think ASEAN needs to think whether or not, does ASEAN think Indian Ocean is part of its strategic milieu or not, right? It does so in the AOIP, right? But here's a test of how you would respond, on what you would say, when a very serious, in my view, very serious incident, not involving ASEAN, is taking place in the Indian Ocean, right? And another point is, I'm listening to the points of discussions under the 4 pillars, yeah, and also on other issues, yeah. And a question, and I don't have the answer to this, yeah. Michael was involved as Deputy Secretary General. Maybe he has a sense of this too. But the question I honestly answer as a scholar, right? I can't say this as a diplomat, right? But as a scholar, is, does ASEAN have too many plans on paper, right? I mean, I lose track of ASEAN's programs and activities. So many things are on paper, I read the ASEAN plan, ASEAN Community Plan until 2045, and the ones before until 2025, right? And a lot of points, you know. We studied at FPCI. It's hard to track which ones are actually, you know. And the question is, does ASEAN have too many plans, right? And one was the ASEAN power grid, right? We discussed it, right? The plan has been around for a long time, you know, but we don't know how implementable. Thanks, Diane. Yeah. So that's something that we think about. And the final point is this. I think the biggest grand picture, the biggest strategic picture facing ASEAN Summit in May, and I hope they think about it, right, is, look, with all this going on around the world, the basic response is, okay, let's protect our fort, right? Hey, Bill, yeah. Let's guard the ASEAN fort, because that's the place where we have control, that's where we have a habit of cooperation, that's where we have the institutions, that's where we have the, what do you call it, the networks, you know, the dialogue partners, the Asia Summit, ARF, and so on, right? But the question is, you know, what next? You know, how do we strategically respond, without being too reactive, you know, right? How do we ensure that as the next world order comes in, as the turbulence are continuing, how do we ensure that ASEAN remains masters in our own region, and how do we ensure that external powers' engagement in the region will not harm Southeast Asia, right? Because the tendency now is, and I know there's this dictum, we don't choose, right? But the latest trend is, if you don't choose us, or if you choose the others, or if we get closer, or you do more with the others, then you're going to pay, right? The United States tried to put this into the Indonesia tariff deal, right? And in fact, there is a clause that says, hey, you know, you do something with a third country without our permission, you're going to be in trouble. We're going to clobber you, right? So, and I think they're doing this with other countries in Southeast Asia, besides Indonesia as well. I'm not an expert, you know, on this, but this is a trend that increasingly there's pressures on ASEAN centrality, right? And I don't want that, you know. I want us still to be sterile, and for ASEAN to be accepted by all the external powers, right? So again, how do we respond to that? How do we keep our safeguards intact? That's the big question. And I hope the Filipino chairmanship and the ASEAN leaders taking part are sensitive enough to this and do not see this as business as usual, right? So, so with that, I will close, and I will just also read out the points that were written by the Secretariat, and this has been consulted with others on the special session that we had yesterday. I will just read it. The participants of AOIP Vision Group Conference 2026 began the session by discussing the situation in the Middle East, and the discussion reflected the following points. One, deep concern over the war and its implication. Participants expressed deep concern about the war and its implications, It could trigger simultaneous energy, economic, and security shocks that propagate across the Indo-Pacific. A disruption of oil flows in the Straits of Hormuz would spike prices and inflation, undermine fiscal stability in import-dependent states, strain supply chains, and increase the likelihood of asymmetric maritime and diaspora-related crises. Two, there was diverse perspectives and shared objective. Participants shared a variety of perspectives on the positions of ASEAN member states and dialogue partners regarding the Middle East situation. And notwithstanding these differences, there was a common understanding that the situation should be de-escalated and the war is not in anyone's interest. Third, on effects on strategic relations, the discussion noted that the conflict is affecting many countries' relationship with the parties involved, including dynamics within the U.S. alliance. And fourth, mitigation through middle power cooperation and economic realignment. To mitigate the risks posed by the conflict, participants recommended practical cooperation and coordination among middle powers to reduce the impact of war on their economies and security without over-reliance on great powers. The conflict is also accelerating energy transitions and creating momentum for formation of a new international trade order, including the EU, CPTPP, and ASEAN RCEP. Fifth, opportunity to review AOIP. In relation to ASEAN, participants viewed the situation in the Middle East and other recent developments that have increased global unpredictability and regional tensions are factors that necessitate ASEAN to revisit and review AOIP, with intensive consultation with its other partners in the Indo-Pacific. Such review should be aimed at ensuring AOIP remains relevant, fit for purpose, and capable of delivering concrete outcomes that preserve inclusive, open, and rules-based Indo-Pacific. Noting that AOIP will mark its 10th anniversary in 2029, participants emphasized the need for timely, actionable improvements. Yeah. So I hope that is a fair reflection of our discussions. And again, thank you for coming, and I hope to see you the next year. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dino. And ladies and gentlemen, with that, we conclude the AOIP Vision Group Conference 2026. We hope that the ideas and recommendations from here will contribute to meaningful progress and stronger cooperations across the Indo-Pacific. And on behalf of the organizing committee, thank you for your participation. Ladies and gentlemen, before we conclude, we have a small token of appreciations for all the delegates. Our committee will now distribute the souvenirs and try to get something different for all the delegates.